It was nearly midnight when Dr. Emma Sinclair closed the door of her lab, exhausted from another long day of research. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she made her way through the empty corridors of the Genix Research Center. Emma paused for a moment, looking out the window at the impenetrable blackness enveloping the remote complex. Only a few lone streetlights illuminated the deserted parking lot below. Emma sighed heavily, remembering how hard her last project had been for her. For the past year, she and her team had been experimenting with a promising new drug, a powerful neurological stimulant that could significantly improve cognitive function and sensory perception. Preliminary tests showed incredible results beyond their wildest expectations. But along with these breakthrough successes came a growing sense of unease. Taking the elevator down to the first floor, Emma replayed the day's events in her head. The test subject, a young man in his early 20s, had developed disturbing physical and psychological side effects after taking his last dose of the drug. His heart rate increased dangerously, he fell into a psychotic trance-like state, and began to lash out violently at the doctors and nurses who tried to restrain him. It took a strong sedative to finally calm him down, but even then the effects lasted for several hours. This was not the first such case. Over the past few months, a pattern had emerged. The powerful effects of the drug on the brain seemed to have serious consequences that threatened to spiral out of control. Emma knew she had to stop the trials immediately, but the implications of their research were too massive to simply abandon. The potential benefits to humanity were inestimable, and at the same time, the risks were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. When the elevator doors opened, Emma stepped out into the dimly lit lobby. The lone guard on duty looked up briefly from his desk, nodded in recognition, and returned to the security monitors. Emma hurried through the lobby and out the front doors. The cool night air was a welcome respite from the oppressive atmosphere of the lab. She climbed into her car and started the engine with a roar as she pulled out of the parking lot. As the Genix object disappeared in the rearview mirror, Emma felt a growing sense of unease. She realized she had a choice to make: continue down this dangerous path in pursuit of scientific glory, or abandon the project and risk losing years of hard work. The next morning, Emma arrived at the lab and found it in complete chaos. Police cars and ambulances were parked chaotically at the main entrance, their sirens blaring. A crowd of confused employees stood huddled together, many of them in tears. As Emma approached, one of the guards intercepted her. "Dr. Sinclair, thank goodness you're here. There's been an incident. One of the test subjects. He's dead." The guard's face was ashy, his hands trembling. Emma felt her heart ache. "What happened?" "I don't know all the details, but from what I understand, the subject broke free of the restraints and attacked the staff. He was completely out of control. They had to use lethal force to stop him." Emma squeezed past the guard and rushed toward the main entrance. As she stepped inside, the picture became even more horrifying. The lobby was splattered with blood, broken furniture and equipment lying everywhere. Two orderlies were rolling a covered gurney toward the exit, its contents unclear. "Dr. Sinclair, you can't go in there," yelled one of the orderlies. "It's not safe." Emma ignored the warning and rushed down the hallway toward the lab. As she reached the door, she heard the frantic voices of her co-workers mingling with the howling of the emergency alarm. What she saw next was forever imprinted on her memory. The lab had become a war zone. Equipment smashed, chemicals strewn across the floor. And in the center of it all, a lone figure lay motionless on the floor, his limbs twisted at an unnatural angle. Emma recognized him immediately. It was James, one of her most promising young researchers. "Oh my God," she whispered, kneeling down next to his lifeless body. Tears came to her eyes as she gently closed his eyelids. "It happened so fast," a trembling voice said. Looking up, Emma saw a doctor, Lena Blackwood, her colleague, standing over her. One minute he was fine, the next he just snapped, attacked Samantha and the others. "We had no choice but to..." Lena's voice broke, and the unspoken words hung in the air. Emma felt a deep, sickening dread wash over her. This was a failure that threatened to destroy everything they had worked so hard for. In the days that followed, the full extent of the tragedy was revealed. It turned out that the test subject who had died in the lab was only the first of several victims. A disturbing trend emerged across the country as other research centers conducting similar tests reported outbreaks of violence and deaths among their test subjects. Amidst this chaos, Emma withdrew into herself, haunted by the weight of responsibility. She was so blinded by the promise of their research, so eager to push the boundaries of what was possible, that she failed to notice the warning signs. Innocent people died as a result. Weeks turned into months, and the noose around Emma and her colleagues tightened ever tighter. Lawsuits were filed, congressional hearings were held, and an indefinite moratorium was placed on the entire project. Emma's reputation, once a rising star in the scientific community, was now in jeopardy. One evening, sitting alone in her empty apartment, Emma finally admitted to herself that the experiment was out of control, and she was powerless to stop it. The drug they had created, once hailed as a breakthrough, had turned into a nightmarish Frankenstein's monster, wreaking untold destruction. With a heavy heart, Emma made the decision to shut down the project for good. She knew it meant the end of her career, but the alternative was unthinkable. The risk was too great. As she drafted her official letter of resignation, a single tear rolled down her cheek. In the weeks that followed, the GenX facility was shut down and the remaining test subjects were transferred to secure psychiatric units. The investigation continued, but after the project was halted, the public outcry eventually began to subside. Emma dropped out of sight, leaving her post and disappearing from the scientific community. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Emma knew that the experiment wasn't over.